Good afternoon. It's Monday, the 9th of August, 2021, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. Your host today, Mike Robinson, myself, Brian Gerrish, and we're delighted to be joined by David Scott, bringing us northern exposure from north of the border.
Well, Brian, it's code red. Code red is the thing. The question is, can people handle the truth? And I'm not certain about that because, well, the truth is that there's a new IPCC report out. They produced They produced a nice video for this. This is the sixth assessment report. It's the latest on a set of IPCC reports that assess the scientific knowledge on climate change. Is that true? I wonder, including our past, present, and future climate. It's all very exciting stuff. Heat waves, flooding, droughts, these are all going to be more frequent, according to this report. The world is set to hit 1.5 degrees above, that's Celsius, above pre-industrial levels in the next 20 years. I think if we go back a few decades, Maurice Strong was saying something similar, and it was supposed to happen by 1980 or something, but of course it didn't quite happen that way. The rate of warming in the last 2,000 years is unprecedented, and it's unequivocal that it's happening. Every independent region, well, we'll see a graphic on that in a second. Every inhabited region on Earth is already impacted by climate change, and the report is saying that even in the most what they describe as optimistic scenarios, some changes are already locked in. There's nothing we can do about it, but we've got to stop it going any further by completely stopping all human activity at the earliest possible opportunity. So let's just have a brief listen to what the United Nations Environment Programme Chief Inger Anderson said. Let's just have a listen to this.
You've been telling us for over 3 decades of the dangers of allowing the planet to warm. The world listened, but didn't hear. The world listened, but it didn't act strongly enough. And as a result, climate change is a problem that is here now. Nobody's safe, and it's getting worse faster. We must treat climate change as an immediate threat, just as we must treat the connected crisis of nature and biodiversity loss and pollution and waste as immediate threats. We understand that climate change exacerbates already grave risks to biodiversity and natural managed habitats. Ecosystem degradation damages nature's ability to reduce the force of climate change. And as the IPCC Working Group 1 report reminds us, reducing greenhouse gases will not only slow climate change, but will improve air quality. It's all connected. It's time to get serious because every ton of CO2 emission adds to global warming.
So it's time to get serious, David. It's code red. The world is ending. And of course, everything is interconnected. Now, she didn't mention that COVID's interconnected with this, which is a bit surprising perhaps. But what did she say? You know, pollution, biodiversity, all these things are interconnected with climate change. So, you know, we've got to stop what we're doing immediately.
Air quality, she said, air quality. If we cut greenhouse gases, we'll improve air quality. The major greenhouse gas is water vapour. The next one is, methane. Okay, methane's probably not the most pleasant thing. Then CO2, which is plant food. There's nothing to do with air quality, really. Just one of many lies. The whole thing that we've been telling you for 30 years, yes, and for 30 years you've been wrong, dear. For 30 years you've been saying the sky has fallen and the sky has stubbornly refused to fall, and you're simply doing the same thing with slicker PR and better production quality, and you think that that will actually make the difference. But the underlying narrative is utterly incoherent, and that's the problem.
Well, it is the problem, but of course this was the problem with COVID-19 as well. The underlying narrative was utterly incoherent, and we've made this point before, and I appreciate that there's some people possibly that will be watching this that are going to have difficulty with the challenge that's being placed on this because many people believe there is a climate emergency, that it's an immediate emergency and it has to be dealt with straight away. But David, the types of science that we've seen over the last 30, 40 years with climate change is exactly the same type of science we've seen over the last 15 months with COVID. And there are people speaking out against the so-called consensus with respect to climate. They just get the same treatment in the mainstream press that people that speak out against the COVID consensus get. In other words, they are generally ignored.
Yes, it works exactly the same way. If you do not buy the official narrative, whatever it happens to be this week, you are no platform, you will not be funded, you quite possibly will be dismissed from your post. That's how we control the narrative. And it's based largely on computer modeling. And when you look at reality shows something very different, which we'll come to shortly.
So here is the graphic that they produced in their report, which claims that every inhabited region across the globe with human influence contributing to many observed changes in weather and climate extremes. So the sort of bluey-green color shows, they claim, an increase in observed change in heavy precipitation as an example. No decreases, but there are quite a number of areas there where there is low agreement on the type of change, and quite a number of regions, probably more than half, that are limited data and or literature. So how can they make a claim when in fact for half the planet they have no data, or the data is limited, or it's not agreed upon? It seems completely irrational.
Sounds very similar to COVID-19, Mike, actually. Your analysis there fits that to a T. Exactly.
So what did Boris say? Well, he said today's report makes for sobering reading, but don't worry, because the UK is leading the way on this. Alex Sharma said the science is clear. So there we go. We don't have to consider anything. The science is clear. But the question is, did the mainstream press cover anything here or ask any questions? Well, not really. The BBC Climate Change IPCC report is code red for humanity. And this just, no questions in this at all. They simply stated things as facts, whether they were disputed or not. RTE in Ireland, UN Landmark Climate Report is code red for humanity. So no collusion there. The FT, even global warming will hit 1.5C by 2040, warns IPCC report. Well, okay, so right across the media, we have the same types of narratives, no sort of questioning of the thing. But let's just remind ourselves that it was just the end of July that Science published this. UN Climate Panel confronts implausibly hot forecasts for future warming, because at the last minute they realized that actually people weren't going to buy the story they were giving because their climate models were suggesting 5%, not 1.5%. And so they had to put some mitigation into the climate models to try and get some numbers that would make sense to people. Well, that seems to have happened, because the reports come out and it's 1.5 degrees. So let's see what else has been going on. Alex Sharma, of course, we've got to remember, just like with COVID, because if you remember the lockdown, we all had to lock down, except if we were government ministers or government advisors, and then we could do what we liked, because so many of them got caught breaking the lockdown rules. Well, Alex Sharma can do what he likes. He's traipsing from one end of the planet to the other. We showed this on Friday as he traveled the world, heading across many places, no quarantining at all, but and plenty of
elbow bumping.
Oh yes, of course, and plenty of CO2 generated in response. But that's okay. We've got he was in Austria and he met up with Arnold Schwarzenegger there. So clearly not just Alex Sharma that's touring the globe at the moment. This is all, of course, in preparation for COP26, where they're going to bring thousands and thousands of people from all parts of the globe to Glasgow. Because that is the most climate efficient way to do that, is to get them all together in one place, all taking flights and so on. So once again, just as with COVID, we have rules for one and rules for the other, David.
We do. And I love the way that the baseline, the statistical manipulation is quite a joy to behold. The baseline level for measuring global warming is, of course, the end of the mini ice age. 90, 100 years before there was any significant CO2 increase due to any sort of human activity. So, yeah, that looks legit.
Doesn't it? And just to remind everybody, as again, we mentioned this on Friday, but we have to bring it back on. Climate disclosures are the mechanism by which companies are going to be assessed for how well they're doing against the policy. And this was the Wall Street Journal covering comments by this man, Gary Gensler, who's from the Securities and Exchange Commission, saying that investors are looking for consistent, comparable, and decision-useful disclosures so they can put their money in companies that fit their needs. Well, what's this about? Well, we've got to go back to Mark Carney in 2019, saying at the core of the system now, these questions are being asked if you're on the right side or the wrong side. And if you're on the wrong side, what are you going to do about it? Companies that don't adapt, including companies in the financial system, will go bankrupt without question. There will be industries, sectors, and firms that do very well during this process because they'll be part of the solution. But there will also be ones that lag behind, and they will be punished. And the key point here is, just as with the COVID situation, Brian, this is about behaviour.
It's about behaviour and the control of behaviour. We are going to see in the coming weeks a lot more information coming out about SAGE Group in particular, and the immense expertise in changing people's behaviour to the correct behaviour, what they say. But also we got banks involved in this. The World Bank's fully involved in it, and so I'm not surprised that we're seeing. We did see Mark Carnage there coming out with that statement. They are going to change our behaviour to meet their model of the future. That's the plan, if we allow it.
But David, the climate must be causing lots of deaths.
Well, this is the thing. It appears that there is a hole in the narrative. We have a problem, Mike. You see, the number of climate-related deaths has gone off a cliff. It's plummeted. It's vastly less than it was because, you know something, as we get richer as a society, we become much more resilient against the effects of nature. And the problem is getting less and less all the time. We're not talking about that, though. And neither are we talking about the actual data. And like COVID, the solution to the COVID crisis is to look at the data, look at the numbers. This is a plot of the monthly annual temperature in the UK. And it runs from, I think, 1990 to 2020. And you will look at that over and over and over, and you will try and find the global warming red zone crisis, and you will fail. Nothing's happening. This is what you will perceive if you're a human being living in Britain. Nothing's happening. We're told we must be afraid, and nothing's happening. It seems strangely familiar.
It does, but imagine that, if you will, a world where people believe the temperature of the planet can be controlled by giving more money to the government.
Well, this is a very good meme. There was an interview the BBC did with some very nice ladies from Glasgow, from the east end of Glasgow, who said that they would solve climate change if the government would just give them the money, they would get it done. And this is brilliant because this shows that these people have correctly understood the true meaning of climate change. That's all about getting money channeled through the government. They realise it. They're holding out their hands and saying, give us the money. They realise what climate change is all about. It's not about climate.
Indeed. Well, look, just leave you with this thought. This is a World Climate Declaration. I believe this was signed in December last year from an organization called Climate Indulgence. So this statement, there is no climate emergency, which has been signed by over 900 scientists, from climate scientists, but also geological and geographical scientists as well. So let's just quickly run through what they're saying. Climate science should be less political, while climate policies should be more scientific. Scientists should openly address uncertainties and exaggerations in their predictions of global warming, while politicians should dispassionately count the real costs as well as the amount